Hello, Greg from Balloon Market here, and welcome to BMTV. We are joined by Mark Drury from Pioneer. Mark, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
And today Mark is going to show us a technique that can reduce costs and I think gives a great effect. It's called candy striping. So Mark, over to you.
Fantastic. So I'm going to use loamy pole and base, which is already glued together.
Okay, yep.
I'm going to add some clusters. So these are all pre-prepared, and we've got BMTV basics on how to do clusters.
Absolutely. Do you want me to hold?
Yeah, if you don't mind. So I'm just going to wrap those on and push those down. So essentially, I could continue to make my clusters and continue to make a column. If I do that, obviously I've got to put some colour and some scale into it and everything else. So this technique uses non-round balloons and allows me to wrap the pole with a nice spiral of non-round balloons. Okay. So to do that, on this one for scale, I'm going to use 160 Qs. Right. In lime green.
Can you use 260 Qs for this?
Yep, you can use 260s, 350s. I don't think a 646 would work for you.
Okay.
But yeah, all the others are fine. So I'm going to knock that off.
So why have you chosen a 160 for these rather than a 260?
Scale. If I used a 260, the centre spiral would be quite bulky. Okay. And when you see the finished piece, I'm trying to scale it so that it's pretty. Okay. Rather than clunky, as it could be if I'd have done 5-inch balloons all the way to the top.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'll just inflate my second. I'm going to need 4 of these, but I've pre-inflated 2. So once you've inflated and then you've knotted off your 160, I'm going to duplicate these together after the knots. So the reason I've done that is so that I've got a little bit of 160 in between the two. Okay. So that allows me to have a little bit of spare room to hook in. Okay. And then if you just hold the base again for me. Yeah. And I'm just going to hook this under my last cluster. Wow. And pull right the way through to the centre, and that sits there. I'll get my next one and do exactly the same. Now, just to make this tight into the bottom, I normally cross the 2 clusters over. Okay. And make sure that each balloon is sitting as the next balloon would in a cluster. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to spiral these round. So essentially all I'm doing is I'm forcing the balloons to spiral round, and I'm moving all 4 balloons at the same time.
You've not hit me yet, that's good. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so when we get to the top where you're going to finish, what I need to do now is secure these off. Okay. So I'm going to choose one of them. Yeah. And I'm going to put a twist into the balloon. Yeah. And I'm going to use that to wrap very tightly all the way around and tight to the centre. And as soon as I've done that, the wrap around the 2 and then a crossover of the 2 remaining ones means that it's partially secured. Okay. So now I can let the air out, making sure I'm holding on to these last 2. If you don't mind just putting your hand on the base again, and then I can pull tight and make my secure knot.
So what do you do? I'm obviously holding this base to make it easy for you. What do you do if you've not got somebody to hold the base for you?
Well, I can do it myself, but it's not very good on camera. Okay. So if you let go, we'll actually do it. I can sort of hold it. It's just not as, looks a bit caggy handed. Yeah, yeah. That's the only thing. So I can just, the base will move a little bit, and I can hold these round. So once I've tied those round, I can now, I've got my spiral, my candy striping around my pole, I can now add the remainder of my clusters.
So that loosened a bit, there was obviously a bit of a gap here, so you just do what you just did there, you just tighten it before you go any further.
It loosened slightly, and that's either because I've not got that as tight as I possibly could around the top, but it's also got nothing to attach to yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my next cluster on, cross that over, and use the excess to actually physically attach that with a few wraps in to finish that off.
Okay.
And then my last cluster into the top, and that effectively is our candy stripe done.
Yeah.
Should we add to that air focal point?
Yeah. Okay.
Which is an air-filled bubble, so it's nice and inexpensive to do compared to a helium one.
Absolutely.
And what we're going to do is we're just going to remove the pre-attached ribbon.
And the great thing about bubbles, of course, is that they stay inflated for
a very long time.
Ever. Well, for a long time.
Forever,
maybe not forever,
a very long time.
But a very, very long time.
So I'm going to roll tie the neck with a piece of 260Q that I've taken the air out of. And make sure I've got a nice secure knot there. And then I can attach that into the top. Of our design. And then just to finish off, we can add a little flower.
I guess if you wanted to, you could add a flower in the middle, or
a flower in the middle, or do that however you want to complete your design.
See, it's all air filled. That's the great thing about this.
It is.
So it's relatively, well, very inexpensive.
Fantastic for shop windows. Yeah. Because obviously being air filled, it'll stay there for a long time. Great for delivery pieces as well. And looks really good.
It's just compared to a 3-balloon bouquet, for instance. If you were to offer something like that for whatever kind of party, wedding, conference, whatever, it just is so much more than just a plain old 3-balloon bouquet, isn't it?
And you can, when you come to doing bigger poles and base work, the candy striping works just as well. And we've done a small retail design here, but this could be part of a big decor piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly the same way.
So is there anything else we can do with this technique?
Yeah, I have got another little idea.
Have you?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we should do that.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay. So Mark, what is this other design you're going to show us today?
Well, I'm really keen on these table arch kits that you sell. I think they're really, really good bits of kit.
Yeah.
And traditionally, you'd actually be inflating lots of 5-inch to different or the same size, and you'd be covering it with about 40 clusters of 4 5-inch balloons to create a table arch.
Yeah, we've done that. We've done that ourselves. Yeah.
But I'm going to show you a way of reducing the cost of the materials that you use by about half.
Okay.
And increasing the perceived value.
That's always good. So are these, what are these used for? I mean, are they, is it,
well, most people use them for a wedding cake table arch. And when people, customers ask, have you got any arch to cover the wedding cake? This is one of the go-to pieces of kit. I actually think it's totally undersold.
Yeah.
Anywhere that somebody's got a cake, whether it be at home, for their first birthday party or children's birthday parties, anywhere there's a cake, we should be doing some more creative designs and making the most of it.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So in the kit, if I open this up, you do get some full instructions from the manufacturer. I'm going to ignore those as
of course,
all men do. And then you get 4 lengths.
No offence to any men out there that actually do read instructions. Mark did not mean it.
Can't read. So 4 lengths of very, very lightweight plastic tube.
Yep.
And then we also get in the pack some connectors.
Yep.
To connect the rods together, and then we get a clamp and a little table clamp circle. So the table clamp circle actually, and I don't know its correct term, sorry Greg, but the table clamp circle just sits on top of the threaded area so that you get a good bit of purchase when you're actually clamping down to the table.
Okay.
So I won't show how to fully create this arch because we've done some pre-preparation, but essentially you'd be attaching the different lengths.
Now, would you always use all 4 poles to make an arch?
It all depends on the table. The one we're using today will only use 3.
Okay.
But what I would recommend is, as you can see, these can pull apart easily and they can spiral. So I'd recommend you just, as you're creating it, you just take a piece of clear tape and just tape these into position as you're making it.
So this is also like almost like a mini aeropole, isn't it?
It's a very, very similar process. Very similar process. And then what I'd also recommend to do is to tape in your end piece.
Yeah.
Now, instantly you're thinking, well, how do I then make my arch? And to be honest, I'd make it flat. It's really easy to get the spacing right on the clusters.
See, I would have put the arch, this on the table first and then put the balloons on. That would have made more sense to me.
As long as you don't pack too tightly, you can pack your arch fully and then just literally put it into position, and it will bend into position exactly the same as the aeropole does.
Yeah. Do you think you could use just 2 of these? Because these are obviously a bit more brittle than the aeropole.
I've never tried to use 2.
It looks a bit tight.
But in theory, I don't see why you wouldn't.
All right.
Okay.
Teeny tiny cake, cupcake.
Teeny cupcake arch. It's a whole new market.
There you go.
So should we show you one I've created?
I think, we should, because we're not going to go through, as you say, doing the whole thing, but that's the arch kit. Let's get that out of the way. And here, as they say on Blue Peter, is one we prepared earlier. Does Blue Peter still exist?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Did you ever get a badge?
I never got a badge, no.
No, neither did I.
My daughter's got a badge.
Has she?
Yeah.
So, the only disadvantage with doing this is that we haven't taped the clamps at either end.
Yeah, because I noticed that one isn't quite down at the bottom.
It's going to push off. So you'd normally have this taped and prepared flat, but as you can see, it moves quite easily into the arch position.
All right.
So
this is 3.
This is 3, just because that fits the space, and we can just about talk over the top. So what we've done here, instead of fully covering this with clusters, we're going to do some of the candy striping that we've just used in between, and we'll finish this piece off here.
Excellent.
These. So if you can pass me the 160s that I've pre-inflated. Okay, so I'm going to follow the spiral in the same way on this occasion, but you wouldn't have to if your design wants you to. And then I'm just going to continue to wrap our spiral around.
So as you say, you could do this flat, and would you spin the arch kit, or how would you do it if you're doing it flat?
I think it's totally down to whoever's doing it.
Okay.
For me, I'm used to doing it from a big pole and base because that's where I first learned the technique.
Okay.
So I'd probably more likely to wrap this round with wrap around the pole with my fingers and do it that way. So I've left the cluster space at the end, and then I'm just going to wrap that tightly in. So there's one wrapped all the way around, and that's the one I'm not going to let go. Just to be secure, I can cross the other 2 over.
Yeah.
And then knot those tightly onto the line.
See, that's the bit I would have struggled with, is not knowing how to end it.
Yes.
So you just take one balloon, wrap it round, and then...
And as long as that's wrapped tightly around it, and it's sort of squoze the air out, and it's all the way down, you won't have a problem losing the air further than that point from the 160 or 260s. Okay, and then we're just going to add a connecting cluster in. Make sure that's sitting right.
To a 160Q there.
And then to stop it spinning, I've got to just wrap these around the base. And I know you can't see this, sorry, but just wrap those around the last cluster to secure it into position before I remove my excess.
Okay.
And then we can finish off with some creative elements.
A little bit of adornment.
Just onto our design. And I'm going to be quite random with where we put these.
So when we were talking about this earlier on, we were talking about if you were to do this entirely with 5-inch balloons, we worked it out, well, it was going to be roughly 7 times the cost of doing it this way, 6 or 7 times the cost.
I think, yeah.
Of balloons. You've still got the arch kit cost, obviously.
Because of the time it takes to inflate all the clusters and everything else you're going to do, I think that it's at least double cost, even if you say it's at least double cost. It's quite incredible that you've added design but reduce the cost to you of producing it.
Yeah, yeah. And then of course that's the other thing, you can just, for this, if you compare this to just a normal 5-inch one, definitely charge more for this than you would for a normal one. So you're reducing your costs and you're able to charge more. Mark burst a balloon. Anyway, that was just the last bit, don't worry about that.
I do, you know I do.
You don't worry about that.
At the cutaways at the end, that will be perfect, I promise.
Anyway, there you go. It will be perfect, I promise. Anyway, Mark, thank you very much for that. I think that's a really great technique, and I think it just makes so much sense. Costs less, make more. It's fantastic. Thanks very much for that. Hope you enjoyed it. Oh, question of the week, Mark. Question of the week.
Oh, shall I use a personal topic?
Use a personal one, go on.
Baby names.
Mark's got one on the way.
I've got one on the way. I've got less than a month. I need some suggestions.
In fact, by the time this is aired, it might already be here.
Oh, yeah.
So how are we going to do that?
Just suggestions.
Suggestions.
I'll be reading the comments.
Yeah, who knows? If anybody gets the name that is actually chosen, do they win something?
This isn't a competition.
Anyway, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for subscribing. See you next time. Bye. Bye.